All right, wrestling fans, I am here with Jake Short, the first ever head coach of the Grand Valley State Women's Wrestling Program. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I have been hearing all this news as you have been releasing the roster for this upcoming team, brand new team, and I know people are really excited about it. So we are going to jump into all of that. But for those that don't know you, let's get a little bit into your wrestling background. Can you talk a little bit about your career in wrestling and how you kind of got your way onto the University of Minnesota wrestling, where you had your collegiate career?
Absolutely. So, and I'll try to remember back to high school.
Not that long ago.
Yeah, so yeah, it feels long.
No, but we're the same age, so you can't say that it was a long time ago.
So in high school, I had a very, very solid high school career. I was a four-time Minnesota State champ, three-time Fargo finalist, five-time Fargo All-American. Um, I was surrounded by a lot of great coaches as I was growing up through my youth into my high school career. And then went on to wrestle at the University of Minnesota, where I was a 4-year starter for the University of Minnesota, and again, just surrounded by great people. Really, the reason why I ended up getting into coaching wasn't necessarily because I loved how my career ended up. I made the national tournament three times, but never All American, and so that was actually a really tough thing for me. I made the blood round, round of 16, and it was just like I almost was ready to be done with the sport. To be honest with you, um, I was a pretty good freestyle guy. I was thinking about potentially making a run, but after my senior year, I'd gone through, multiple surgeries, just like you ask any freaking Division One guy, especially wrestling in the Big Ten, you get hurt. Part of it, the constant grind, and so I was kind of to a point where I was wore out and ready to be done. But then I actually kind of jump started my coaching career by starting to coach for a club called Pinnacle,
Yeah,
Minnesota. Jared Lawrence and Brandon Paulson,
a lot
and
of talent coming out of Pinnacle.
yeah, and so that kind of sparked my love for coaching pretty quickly. I fell in love with a new process of the sport, and um, really feel like I elevated my wrestling in those 3 to 4 years of coaching at Pinnacle, just from being around different styles, different coaching styles, and so that's kind of how I got into coaching. Was actually Jared had called me up. I was on vacation, ready to be done with wrestling. I had no idea that I was going to jump back into it, and Jared just was like, "Hey, you want to try this out?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess I'm an unemployed, just graduating from college kid who likes to golf." So I was like, I guess I can try it out before I get into the real world. And so that's kind of how I got into
Yeah, and golf's an expensive one. You got to have some way to
it.
finance that on the back end. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so tell me about your path from getting to coaching at Pinnacle. You also coached with Minnesota USA's state team, and then you became the head coach at Augsburg, very successful women's program, 2 top 10 finishes there. How did that offer come about, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, it's kind of been my dad will tell you that I'm one of the luckiest guys he knows. And I don't necessarily, think it's all luck. I think being in the right place at the right time, knowing the right people. I'm the other thing that I think I bring to the table is I'm super passionate about what I'm doing. I have a very addictive personality. When I want to do something, I do it to the best of my ability. And so, when I got into coaching, next thing I know, I start working with the Minnesota State girls. And so, getting them ready. I'm the state coach for Fargo, just kind of going to a couple tournaments here and there. And that's kind of when I started falling in love with that side of wrestling, is when I started working with the women. Um, there's a difference. There's a difference between men and women, and not so much like, yes, we're trying to do very similar things technically.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found is a lot of them had wrestled for 2, 3, 4 years, and so and I'm not saying every guy's like this, but a lot of guys, they've been wrestling for 16, 17 years of their lives, like literally starting as soon as they could walk. And so a lot of them, they got a lot of pieces of their wrestling ability engraved in what they do. And what I found with the women is they were eager to learn. Not that men are not eager. I love men's wrestling,
Yeah.
but they were extremely eager to learn, and they picked things up extremely quickly. It was like a fresh slate, and it's like, hey, you are super capable of doing all of these different things. You just need to be shown it, and you need to work at it. You start seeing women who can do extremely advanced pieces of technique if you just give them a chance. And so I jumped into that scene. It was fun. It was enjoyable. And it was like, next thing I know, my wife's pregnant. We're about to have a baby. And then I'm like, okay, do I make my next step in coaching? And Augsburg at the time was hiring. It was kind of a short notice thing. I didn't even know if I wanted to do it right away, and had a couple conversations with a couple different people. Next thing I know, I'm in on an interview. The next day, I get the job with, like I said, I've been around phenomenal coaches, but I kind of jumped right in, and it was a very talented team, a lot of nationally ranked athletes, and so um, I was able to, on the technical side, I was very confident. In the room, I was super confident, but there were still a lot of areas in coaching where I didn't understand, especially college coaching, and so
Mhm.
I jumped head in, just and basically was like, gotta figure it out. And so that experience, although it was very difficult at moments, had some of my highest um, and best wrestling experiences I've ever had in my entire life, even through my career, being able to coach national champs and multiple All Americans. We took sixth that first year and then fifth the second year. And it was just like, for what we dealt with and what we went through, just like having to, me as a first year coach and having these ladies who buy in and, um, they had to adapt it. Some of them have crazy stories too, because it's like, you got to trust some guy who, maybe your second, third year in college, and you got to just hopefully invest into this person. And so I'm super grateful for the opportunity that Augsburg gave me. And I think it has developed me as a coach and has made me the person I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. So did you see that you talked about kind of this eagerness to learn from your former job? Did you see that kind of carry on to your time at Augsburg? And I imagine this kind of comes from this, a lot of these women, and maybe this is changing and we can talk about this later, have never been on an all women's team. Sometimes they wrestle with the boys. Sometimes they don't wrestle with the boys because there's not a women's program. Do you kind of see that feeding into it even when you went to like a college where people were spending kind of 4+ years of their career?
Absolutely. Even right now, it's funny because I still have it's gotten so much better. Like the amount, because of how many states have sanctioned uh,
Hmm.
women's wrestling, and now you're starting to see all women's teams, but there's still athletes out there who have only been on men's team, and to be fully in on a women's team is a completely different environment than I think a lot of them have ever experienced. And fortunately for the ones that have gotten to experience it, they get to come in and, get comfortable with this team, especially high level athletes. They can come in and they jump right into training. But I do think that, you know, with the growth of women's wrestling, it is allowing for an awesome opportunity for the younger athletes. Just like looking even at like the middle school level, if
Hmm.
you take a look at how much they have developed, um, just from 5 years ago, it's crazy. There's some super talent out there, and now you're seeing high school athletes who are 18, 19 years old who are taking the Olympic spot. And I think that just has to do is people are buying into the sport. And now college, the NCAA, NAI, it's getting extremely competitive. And now you're starting to see more and more colleges open up, say, hey, let's take this sport on. And I think it makes it amazing because not only, right now, I would say that there still are some powerhouse teams in women's wrestling at the college level. but I think that gap will start to shrink. I think that the more and more that we keep pushing this sport, the more Division 1 schools, Division 2, that'll keep coming out, getting qualified coaches in, and then you'll start to see, women coaches on the scene, and that's going to be an awesome thing. I don't think we're far away from that. Um, they're you're starting to see kind of, I wouldn't say an end of an era, but starting to see some women who are starting to get a little bit older who may jump into coaching. And I think when that happens, you're just going to see the sport continue to kind of blossom.
Yeah, my husband and I were actually just talking about this the other day about, seeing the success of Coach Chun at Iowa, and just thinking about some of these senior level athletes that might be competing at their final Olympics or final world teams in the coming years, and just thinking about what opportunity that's going to give. So maybe, start of a new era instead of
Absolutely.
end
Yeah,
of.
correct.
Yeah. So talking about powerhouse schools, I'm sure that's exactly the goal you have in mind as you take the helm of this program. So talk a little bit about kind of what led you to this opportunity right here, head coach of Grand Valley State, as they kind of relaunch the wrestling program.
Yeah. So my story's crazy. My story's crazy how I ended up
Is this
here.
more that luck that your dad would reference?
Yeah, 100%. So to be honest with you, uh, I was fully thinking about coming back to Augsburg. My wife William was turning 2, my son, sorry, and uh, my wife was ready to move home. She's from Michigan. We met. My wife was a gymnast at the University of Minnesota. That's where we met, and so Rachel was ready to move back to Michigan. Um, it was really hard. I still had athletes that I wanted to see out at Augsburg. Our team had just taken 5th in the country. I think we were really starting to develop a culture there. And so I was like, here's the plan, hun. I'm going to live in Minnesota. We'll get a second house in Michigan and we'll do this back and forth thing. That took like 20 days. And that was the end of that. I was like, okay, this is not going to work. And so then I had to have a very hard conversation with my program, letting them know that I'm going to resign from Augsburg and move out to Michigan. I had zero plan. I was actually thinking about going back to school, funny enough. And I moved here. We had a house in Allendale, Michigan, where Grand Valley State is actually located. That's where my wife bought the house. It was in between her parents and her sister, so it was like a nice little middle spot. Uh, I show up planning on maybe going back to school, figuring out what I'm going to do from here on out, and next thing I know, I still remember the day. I had been here for 5 days, I think 5 or 6 days, and then Terry Steiner had called me and asked me if I was still coaching, and I said, not right now. I don't really know what I'm doing. And Terry actually then, it was funny. He was just like, well, I think maybe you should continue coaching. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, Grand Valley's got an opening. And I'm like, I heard about it. And so I decided that day to jump in my car and drive over to Grand Valley. It's the first time I've seen it. And I stepped on campus and I was like, oh, this is it. It can get done here. And the resources are here. They bought the brand new wrestling room, brand new weight room and training facility. And so it's just like I stepped in there and I was like, man, this is amazing. And so, I was like, maybe I'll throw my name in the hat. And at the time, it's kind of funny. It sounded like they already had a candidate picked out. So I was like, perfect. Now I move on to my next thing, and that's okay. Maybe I'll get involved somehow, maybe look at an assistant position or just continue on changing, potentially changing career paths. Well, that candidate ended up not taking the job. I got a phone call the next day. So I was here for about 1 week that I was on campus, and I think everybody was like, wow, this is kind of crazy. The guy moved to Allendale. He's a qualified coach. It seems like the stars are kind of aligning. And so I walk in, I get the job, and then I hit the ground running. And I remember it was like 5 days in when we first, started getting conversation about different transfers and freshmen and people who are interested, like, what is Grand Valley? And so I think we were able to be jump started by a couple different recruits that came in right away, and now we're kind of where we're at today.
Yeah, that is a crazy story. They said if you want to go back to school, you can do it while you coach at Grand Valley.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about this resurgence. So Grand Valley in Michigan, D2 school, had men's wrestling, I think back in the 90s or so.
90s, yeah.
Has had some club wrestling since then, but kind of this big endowment of the program brought back men's wrestling for last season and women starting this season. And you also kind of referenced that new facility. So can you talk a little bit about the support that you've seen from the community and kind of what this facility is looking like for your athletes?
For sure. I would say the Grand Rapids area, Allendale, people love wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
They love wrestling, and I think it's been the timing is right. I think they went to club for a while, had some success on the club team after they had dropped the program, and I just think the timing is about as perfect as you can ask for, because they got the men's coach in there, Joey Simcoe, who does a great job. Was able to put a very competitive program together in his first year. Actually had a ton of incoming freshmen and transfers as well. Had a pretty big roster for first year, and then was able, had a national champ and 2 All-Americans. And the really nice thing for me was that I was able to kind of work with the men's program as I'd been recruiting. So I could run into the wrestling room, get my wrestling fix, get my coaching fix, and then get to work on recruiting and, just getting ready for the season. And so, wrestling coming back to Grand Valley and the support that we've seen just in the first year is unbelievable. And that's what I kind of mean by, even when I just say resources, I'm not only just talking about the facility, the institution as itself, but I'm talking about the support from the fans, from alumni, from donors, and just our faculty. People are excited. They're excited for what Grand Valley Wrestling is going to bring to the table, and I think the men did a great job showing what kind of potential Grand Valley can have even in their first year. And then obviously on the women's side, we were able to bring in a lot of talented athletes that, have been around wrestling for a while. And that's obviously sparking interest. People are excited about what Grand Valley is about to be in this first year. And we're super excited to compete. The facility itself, absolutely stunning. Natural light, brand new women's locker room and men's locker room right in the wrestling room. The wrestling room is massive. There's no other way to put it. Our offices are connected to the wrestling room, so we almost have a little corner, which is awesome. I live basically in the wrestling room, and then like I said, we got a brand new strength training room, and then for our actual training medical purposes, we have our own little a brand new little area as well. So I couldn't ask for a better situation as a coach, which is why I immediately got interest again, to be honest. Is it just felt right when I stepped on that campus.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've seen some of the pictures and some of the social media coverage of it, and I mean, just looks, state of the art, brand new, exactly what I would imagine that athletes would get excited about. So you kind of touched a little bit about some of these transfers, and I mean, if you're talking about an instant impact to a lineup, that's kind of what some of these athletes represent. I know it made a big splash when Sage Mortimer was announced. Sage Mortimer, 2-time All-American. She's been a finalist before. And I remember when I saw the post, a couple weeks ago or last week or whatever, I was like, hold on. I feel like she announced that she was transferring somewhere already. I scrolled back in her Instagram and I was like, hold on, there's a post for her in a GV singlet from 2023. So kind of put the pieces together. But I mean, you've got her, you've got Katie Lang, Noelle Gaffney. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of impact that these transfers are going to have before you kind of get even into the recruits that are entering college for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and there's more to come too. There's still, I think it's 5 transfers that I'm going to be respectful and wait for the post to come out. But I think people will be like, oh, wow, once they see these names come out. Sage was, I got a very soft spot for Sage because she, I'd connected. I had ran a camp out in Utah, and this is literally when I had resigned, kind of that middle spot, where I had resigned from Augsburg. I thought I was honestly done, and I'd already agreed to do a camp. So I was like, all right, I'm going to stick through and make sure I do this camp. And I think Sage just saw who I was, how I coach. I think just I don't want to sound like arrogant or anything, but like my passion for the sport and in my style, how like I'm positive. I'm gonna bring a ton of energy. I'm gonna basically give everything that I have to try and get the athlete to get to where they want to be. And I think she saw that. Um, and immediately I remember the day. We announced that I was going to be the head coach of Grand Valley. The next day, Sage was in the portal. And then I remember getting a call, and Sage was like, "You interested in me coming to wrestle for you?" And I was like, "You betcha." And so to have someone in a situation that she was in is ideal. A phenomenal wrestling program in King University. They've been a staple in women's wrestling for many, many years. And to have her believe in me and who I am, it's not that she'd seen Grand Valley. She had no idea what it was. I had zero training partners for her. And she believed so much in my coaching ability and how I could impact her career, that she was willing to make a drastic change. And so we were able to start our Laker Wrestling Club right away. We were able to get Sage training, and she had a ton of success at the Bill Farrell, then won the U.S. Open, and then made the challenge finals of the Olympic trials. Ended up taking third. So I think she's been really happy with the progression that she's had in her career. And then, so like I said, I can't say enough great things about Sage and her belief in me as a coach and who I am. And so that was obviously a huge impact. And yes, I can totally understand how people can get kind of confused with like what had happened. We've been kind of keeping it quiet. We've been keeping quiet about who's coming to Grand Valley. We just decided so Sage was signed a long, long time ago. But we decided to, which seems crazy. I understand this, but for me, I genuinely wanted people to come to Grand Valley because they wanted to come wrestle here and wrestle for me. I wanted them to have their own experience, and because one of the biggest things for me right now is culture. And some people might be like, "Why, you're crazy? Why would you not like immediately announce all these names and these transfers?" And it's because I want them to want to be here, not just obviously training partners are a huge factor. And I bring that up when we get them on campus and things like that. But I genuinely wanted them to, come in and make their opinion of me and make their opinion of the school and make sure that it's the right fit for the athlete. And I think if, the biggest thing for coaches is, and I think a lot of them do it, is, hey, don't be afraid to go out and take visits and take a look to make sure that this is the right fit for both of us, not just you for me, but me with you as well. Like this has to be a right fit. The culture for Grand Valley is so important, that it needs to come out of the gates and people understand, hey, we're doing this for this reason, and finding our why and why we wrestle and why we do what we do. And so I was able to land Sage. Katie Lang, she's my dog. She's coached at Augsburg. Many ups and downs through her career, and was able to win a national title, took a gap year. And I just think Katie absolutely grew as a human being and as an athlete. And the amount of conversations that Katie and I had just Like, I never once wanted to press her. I never once wanted to be like, Katie, you need to come to Grand Valley.
Yeah.
Katie made that choice by herself. And that's
Mhm.
what I wanted. I wanted her to want to be here and make sure that it's the right fit. And so, um, we have and Noelle Gaffney, again, she's someone who has decided to make a change in her life. Uh, she took a look. She had told me that she had heard good things about me, and when we met, we clicked. She fit right into what I'm looking for as an athlete, and I think it kind of goes both ways. And like I said, I think you guys will. The wrestling world will see soon that we'll have 3 or 4 more that come out here in the next week, and I'll gladly talk about them because I'm super super excited about getting them in the program and getting them on board right away. But for now, we're just kind of hanging out with the transfers that you guys see on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. But
Yeah, and it certainly generated a ton of buzz and kind of just shows some of the excitement about this. Kind of along the same lines, I read an article about Emma Donovan. She was the very first recruit officially to Grand Valley State. She was also the first all-state wrestler for her school, which, I mean, you see that all the time these days with some of these wrestlers because there's never been opportunities like them to have this before. But she said in an interview that she was really excited about the idea of being part of like this inaugural class, building something, like making a name for the team and kind of carrying that with her. What about that do you think is appealing to athletes to kind of be at the start of something? And also I imagine that's got to be very appealing to you that you share that mentality. So can you talk about that a little bit?
yeah, I definitely think there's pros and cons to it. It definitely makes people nervous when
Yeah.
you're first like looking at a school and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a brand new school. I think it helped to hear all the individuals that were taking that leap of faith and jumping on board. And now obviously we're starting to look pretty tough
Mhm.
because so many people are like, oh wow, this is definitely a legit program and they're going to be a problem in the NCAA. And so I think that side of it's sometimes hard, is like you're trying to grow a program. And so when you can land a couple big name transfers right away, that obviously really, really jump started my program. And then also getting these, very talented high school wrestlers to kind of take that leap of faith, that's like where it gets a little hard. Is I was like, man, once I get it rolling, it's gonna roll. But you gotta get
Mhm.
it rolling. So that was like the challenging part. Fortunately for us, we were able to do that pretty quickly. But the other side, the pro side, is like, who doesn't want an opportunity to build something up? You think about women's wrestling and like we've talked about being the first to do so many different things. Hey, I'm the first to be all state or place at the state tournament or for my school. That's like what we're jumping into here. Grand Valley gets to start fresh and we get to kind of um, lay out our own path, and that is so like for me, doesn't make me nervous at all. It's exciting. What an
Mhm.
opportunity to represent such a great institution and be able to go out and wrestle free and battle and look to kind of put a stamp on the uh, all the NCAA. Like Grand Valley's here and we're here to wrestle, and I think that does excite people as much as like it is hard to be like, do I have practice partners? Do I have this? Do I have that?
Mhm.
Does this coach know what he's doing? Like that's the scary side. But again, the pros and cons is the opportunity to start fresh and build something from scratch. I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, and so for anyone that doesn't have the context, just thinking about opportunities, NCAA schools for women's wrestling don't compete in different national titles based on their division. So a Division One, Division Two, a Division Three school could all be the champs at the end of the season. So can you kind of talk about just like the field of NCAA college wrestling right now, and what helps Grand Valley stack up with some of these top teams, both new ones that are emerging and being very exciting right off the bat, and also like you talked about, these kind of historically talented teams that are certainly not all Division One. In fact, there's very few Division One teams.
Yeah, I would say the best word to describe it is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, you got extremely talented Division III program. I was there. I can tell you firsthand. It's challenging. It's challenging when these programs can offer athletic scholarships at the Division II and Division I level. Huge shout out to Joe Norton and what he's been able to do at North Central.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more than that. There's more than that. But he obviously comes to mind. Was able to win a national title and freaking took Iowa to the last round there.
The very last one.
It was tight. And so it can be done. It can be done anywhere. I think as we keep building, I think it will get a little bit harder. The more Division II and Division I programs that come out, I do believe it will be. I'm not saying it can't be done because you're seeing it still. It's being done. But we think it's challenging. When I came to Grand Valley, and it's like, there's so much resources and things that you have to offer. You almost have to step up on the field, just because it's like, an affordable school, athletic scholarships, plus you have your financial aid and all these other things that can kind of make school very affordable. And then the resources and the, brand new facilities. I mean, there's no doubt. I'm sure you have already seen, like I just saw today with Iowa's posts, they've just landed some hammers in the or not even in the transfer portal, just
choosing to start in a college setting.
Correct. And which is great. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I think, it makes you want to talk about trying to get climb a mountain and get it done. I mean, they're definitely making a statement with what they did in their first year, and then able to continue to bring athletes in, and hats off to them for, I think there was a lot of weight on their shoulders. You're the Division I school, you're Iowa. There's a ton of pressure to be the best in the country. You have all these resources. So what are you going to do with it? And they backed it. They did what they went like 29-0 or whatever. I can't remember the exact number, but went undefeated on the season, won national duels, and then won a national title and had multiple national champs. And so huge congratulations to them. But there will be more programs that are going to be coming and battling, and like right now, Iowa's who we got to chase. And so for me and how I run my programs, like we're trying to find Iowa. Where can we wrestle them? Where can we get them? Where can we get our hands on them? As a coach, I have no fear of developing. I have no fear of learning and growing as a coach to help to try and grow my athletes. And so I love the fight. I love the challenge of trying to chase down a team that is definitely, I would say they're a top contender without a doubt. And so arguably the best team in the country, I would say. I mean, they are, but like I said, it can be done. It can be done. And you look at the programs that have been around for so long, McKendree and King come to mind right now. I'm sure there's plenty more, but they've been in the top 5 for many, many years. They've had a ton of success. They've had national champs, won national titles, and so there's definitely some very loaded programs at the top right now. And so for Grand Valley, we want a part of the action.
Yeah.
We want to be in the mix. We want to walk in and we want to battle. We want to battle and we want to compete with the best teams in the country. And like North Central's already on my schedule 3 or 4 times per usual. Like I said, we love it. We want to take on those challenges because we'll be able to grow from it. And I believe in my ability as a coach to be able to continue to develop the athletes. And I think a lot of the athletes that end up wrestling for me love that challenge and love being able to compete at the highest level. We're not looking just try and walk through this thing and try and get, like, we want to get the best competition, so we can be ready for the end of the year, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, there's something about the sport. I don't know very many wrestlers that aren't just so competitive, just the most competitive athletes you've ever met. So, talking a little bit about kind of developing some talent, in addition to those awesome transfers, you guys have got a lot of talented recruits coming in. And for anyone listening that hasn't seen it, they're kind of rolling all of them out on social media. And I noticed, you're keeping a lot of the Michigan talent kind of here on the team. I have a few recruits coming from Michigan. So can you speak a little bit to the talent of girls high school wrestling in Michigan, and kind of the type of athletes you're seeing coming out of those programs?
Yeah, I would say watch out for Michigan. And obviously, I'm a Minnesota boy through and through. I
Mm-hmm.
love Minnesota, but I'm wearing the Team Michigan hat. I went to Fargo, and was able to watch a lot of the Michigan athletes. Ton of talent, ton of talent. Um, you know, for me, getting to kind of build relationships as I'm being around, uh, Michigan wrestling, and I've definitely presented myself in different clubs, and just been able to really start to network and build those relationships. And so what I've found is that Michigan is actually extremely talented. And I really think, sophomore, junior class right now, they had a great senior class, but that sophomore, junior group of athletes are going to be very special. Hopefully we can keep them all in state. And I feel like a lot of programs are like, you want to keep the studs, you want to keep the hammers in the state, and you want them to come wrestle for your state. You want them to come wrestle for Grand Valley in the state of Michigan. And I think we've been blessed this first year that a lot of these in-state athletes, for me, for visits this year, has been crazy. I didn't really have, I would say the structure was very just go with the flow, as far as, hey, can we get you in? And I'm like, yes, when can we get you in? My job this year was to try and bring as many people on campus to see what this is. And so I was able to get a lot of in-state athletes on campus. They saw it. Some of them already knew what Grand Valley was, but then getting to know me, making sure it's the right fit. So we were able to get a handful of in-state athletes, and hopefully in the next few years, we're able to continue to keep them in state and get them in the Grand Valley colors.
Yeah, that's awesome. Keep the ones you can close. Nice public university, lots of degree programs. So you mentioned North Central in the schedule a little bit. Any other opponents or like tournaments, opens, things like that are going to be on the schedule where fans can look out for the team?
Yeah, so we have not released our schedule yet. The
Yeah.
schedule is pretty much done, though, for the most part. We are for sure, we're actually starting our season off at the Stevens Point Open in Wisconsin, which I've gone to both years at Augsburg. I think it's a great starting tournament. I think you're going to get great matches, and you're going to get, 4 or 5 matches going there. So we'll start there. We got a couple duels that we're looking to get in, and then some of the big ones that I'm thinking about, the North Central Open,
Yeah.
I think is one of the toughest opens out there, to be honest. It's definitely a challenging tournament, and you're gonna wrestle the best. And so we're excited to go there, and then we're gonna actually swing down to North Central for a duel. So we're gonna duel them. The date is basically solidified, but we're pretty excited for that because we don't have a ton of duels on our schedule. We have a ton of opens, and then we're going to get some outside of that duel with North Central and the other two. We're thinking about doing a couple home duels, which would be great. But we're going to go to the Bearcat duels, the McKendree duels.
Yeah.
Get a little team wrestling in because we're going to primarily be wrestling in opens. So I'm super excited for that. And then we're taking a hard look at the Midlands tournament.
Yeah.
We may be going to Midlands. We're looking hard at Soldier Salute, but we may have a conflict in there. So we might not be able to go to Soldier Salute. So most likely Midlands. And then one of my favorite tournaments, Missouri Valley. We're going to definitely hit Missouri
All
Valley.
the greatest hits.
Yes, we're going to make sure we hit those big tournaments. I would love nothing more to be at the national duels this year. I think we have a team that could be able to compete. Unfortunately, we're a first year program and uh, everybody kind of solidified the spots. That's kind of like last year. Iowa was able to get in last minute because a lot of teams backed out. And so even though Iowa was a first year program, they actually weren't even going to get into national duels, but there were so many teams that dropped out. Iowa was able to get in this year. Grand Valley, unfortunately, sounds like we will not be in the national duels tournament, and that is definitely one that stings a little bit. I would love to have that on our schedule, but is what it is, and we're still going to get great competition. And yeah, we'll get ready for regionals, and then hopefully put the best team on the mat for the national tournament.
Yeah, so to clarify for anyone, there are national duels that are team duels, but the team still is eligible for regionals and national competition as well. Before we wrap up, is there anything for college women's wrestling fans that you want to leave them knowing about this program in your upcoming season?
I really am just excited, to be honest. I think we have a very, very phenomenal group of young women who are super passionate about the sport, and they're excited. They're excited as well, and I do want to like give a shout out to even um, this incoming class. We had a handful of them wrestle at the Fargo National Tournament. We had two actual junior national champs, in Sabrina Noss and Aspen Glasgow. Aspen's from Minnesota, so it was great to see. Aspen was actually wrestled for the club that I worked at for 4 years, Pinnacle, and then me and Sabrina immediately, made a great connection, and those two were able to get it done at the national tournament. So super excited to get them in the lineup, and then again, just keep an eye out because we got some a couple more transfers coming in, and hopefully that will solidify our lineup, and we'll be ready to compete. We'll be ready to battle, and we'll let the wrestling kind of speak for itself.
Awesome. Love to hear it. We will keep an eye out for the rest of those announcements and all the exciting things that you guys have coming up this season. Thank you again for talking with me and good luck this season.
I appreciate it. Thank you.